Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. In The Guardian today, there's a headline that says PM, which means Prime Minister, and Taoiseach, which is the Irish Prime Minister, hail a new era in relations between UK and Ireland. Some of you might remember a few weeks ago, Ireland was the subject of my weekly lesson. A lot of people find it very hard to understand that Ireland is in two parts, north and south, the southern part being an EU nation and the top part being British. We're going to read through this today, Prime Minister and Taoiseach. Okay, so Taoiseach is a Gaelic word which means fast. And that's the word that the Irish use for their Prime Minister, Taoiseach. It's not a word that you'll see very often, but in Irish politics and in the European Union, they sometimes just refer to it as Prime Minister too. But here it's using his correct title, Prime Minister and Taoiseach hail a new era in relations between the UK and Ireland. Now we're going to go through this just to read the story and see what it's going to teach us about Ireland. It's interesting that Ireland keep their Gaelic title for the Prime Minister, the Taoiseach. And in fact, if you ever go to Ireland, and lesser so in Scotland, you'll be quite uncomfortably confronted with the Irish language, Irish Gaelic. In Scotland, it's called Gaelic, but in Ireland, you'll see bus signs saying An Lar, which means city centre. Or you might see some other things around where you scratch your head and you think, what? The most common one, of course, is when you go into an Irish pub and you see in big letters, Kidamilla Filcha, which means 100,000 welcomes. In Scotland, there's also a lot of Gaelic, especially on government buildings and also on police cars and emergency vehicles, which is very confusing. But because we're British, these things are kept minimal, although there is a growing desire to see Gaelic more and more. Right, this is from today's Guardian. Keir Starmer has pledged a new era in Anglo-Irish relations after years of toxicity caused by Brexit. Oh, really? Years of toxicity caused by Brexit. I actually thought it was about the war where they threw us out in 1921, but it's focusing in here that it's because of Brexit. I think our Queen went to Ireland, I think it must have been about 10, 15 years ago, and that was the first royal to visit since their civil war. Right, let's see. It says here, the Prime Minister has opened a summit between the British and Irish governments in Liverpool. That's like a UK city. Speaking at the first of the annual British-Irish summits, he said the need for a strong relationship between the two countries has never been greater. In the current turbulent times, there were huge benefits to friendship between the two countries, the Prime Minister said in his opening remarks. The Taoiseach, Michael Martin, thanked Starmer for being the centre of gravity and stability. Michael is the Irish name for Michael. And it says here he thanked the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer for being the centre of gravity and stability. Well, I'm no expert in politics, but I think I could hardly describe our Prime Minister as being the centre of gravity. Well, obviously someone likes him. Right, at a time of crisis, it has seen decades of transatlantic relations upended by America. Keir Starmer said he wanted to focus on three themes during the meeting: the UK and Ireland working together to achieve economic growth, domestic security, and the move to net zero. I don't know what net zero is. I suspect that's got something to do with the environment. It says here today's summit really marks a new era in the relationship between the UK and Ireland. I think we've reset our relationship, turned a page on the turbulent years, if I may say, in recent years, which of course is a coded message about Brexit. Right, it says here, yesterday Michael Martin renewed Ireland's pledge, that just means promise, to help the UK reset its relationship with the wider EU. Before the summit, Michael Martin, I'm wondering if I'm saying that right. I think it might actually be Micheál Martin in Gaelic. Micheál Martin said he would do anything to facilitate greater ties, reducing trade barriers caused by Brexit. And then he says it's an extremely important relationship for Ireland, and when the UK economy does well, so do we in Ireland, he said. So as far as we are concerned, this is a joint effort and endeavour. And in that context, as I've said to the Prime Minister, anything we can do to facilitate greater harmony and access the EU markets, the better. Or to put it another way, reduce barriers between our countries. Yeah, well, I mean, they do always vote for us in the Eurovision Song Contest. There's always, like, at least one token mark, one token point from Ireland for the UK, and we also do that as well. We always realise it's our neighbour, so we give them a point in Eurovision. If you don't know what Eurovision is, it's a really trashy song contest that gets really political when we start voting for our neighbours. It says here, this new agreement includes a new data sharing arrangement to lay the groundwork for connections between the growing number of wind farms and the national energy networks. Yeah, that would be the reference to net zero earlier. And there's a picture here of both of them who look deep in conversation with their hands moving. I don't know what that's supposed to represent. Yeah, so that's today's headline. The PM and Taoiseach, which is the Gaelic word meaning fast, which is used by the Irish government to talk about their Prime Minister. In Scotland, they don't do that. They don't quite use Gaelic words in government, although some government departments have Gaelic names. Particularly, I think there's one called Amborscht Gaelic, which is the Gaelic board. It's there to promote the Gaelic language. And in Ireland, though, I think most of the government departments have Irish names. I'm not sure if it's still like that, but my memories of it, I lived there, I think, about 20 years ago. It was very much Irish. Yeah, there we are. So very interesting, very interesting. Yes, Ireland and the UK pointing out that they have a lot more in common and that they should be united. Yeah, so that's perhaps something which we're going to see more of. Although Ireland and the UK have always been best friends. I mean, they've always worked together. They had to, because during the Troubles in Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland and Britain both wanted peace. So they had to negotiate quite heavily. I think that's brought them together, you know. But yeah, Ireland has its own problems, I think, with things like immigration and typical EU problems, which, well, all countries are trying to face right now. What I think is really odd is the fact that the Irish media haven't covered this story at all. In fact, I've been on 3 Irish news websites so far, and there's nothing about the Irish Prime Minister meeting with the British one. I'm not sure if it's been overlooked or if they just didn't feel that it's important enough for a mention. But either way, there's no mention of any meeting between the Prime Minister of the UK and the Taoiseach of Ireland. So I'm not sure what conclusions to draw from that. When I say it, I mean RTE, which is the Irish media, the Irish carrier, the state broadcaster, although it's not owned by the state anymore. It says here, Pope Francis releases audio message. Trump declares March as Irish American Heritage Month. Yeah, there's nothing here about anything related to the Irish Prime Minister meeting with the UK one. I think that says a lot, doesn't it? That speaks volumes, because historically they've never wanted to be dominated by us. So our leading news stories, I think, unless there's a shared value, don't usually feature on the RTE website. Anyway, RTE is another Gaelic name, Radio Telefís Éireann, I believe it is in Irish. My Irish Gaelic is not good. So there we are. Very interesting, dominating our headlines, all about the importance and need for peace with Europe and show a united front. And that's not the way it is in Ireland. But our news tends to be very negative anyway. We're always very suspicious and cynical with news. And I'm sure there are more cheerful things that the newspaper, The Guardian, could have given us this morning, but it's all doom and gloom, as we say in the UK. That's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed this, and let's talk again soon.